Medellin, Colombia, April 14th, 1954. Carrera 52 Street was bustling as always, street vendors shouting prices, children running between the stalls, the smell of hot arepas mixed with the odor of sewage that characterized the city's poor neighborhoods. No one paid attention to the thin 11-year-old girl who walked with unusual determination for her age, her dark eyes fixed on a specific man walking 30 meters ahead. No one noticed when she quickened her pace. No one realized when her right hand slipped inside her worn blouse and grabbed the kitchen knife hidden there, the 15-centimeter blade that she had obsessively sharpened for 3 days until it could cut paper with a mere touch. And no one reacted quickly enough when Griselda Blanco Restrepo, at 11 years old, ran the last 5 meters, jumped onto the back of an adult man, and plunged that knife into his neck with such force that the tip of the blade came out the other side. The man was Joaquin Rios, 32 years old, construction worker, chronic debtor, occasional bazuco user, and known in the neighborhood for never paying his debts. Joaquin owed money to many people, but the debt that mattered, the only one that killed him on that sunny April Tuesday, was just 40 Colombian pesos that he owed to Griselda's mother. 40 pesos, the equivalent of perhaps $2 American, the price of 2 basic meals. The amount that Ana Lucia Restrepo had lent to Joaquin 3 months earlier when he showed up at her door begging for help, promising to repay in a week, swearing by all the saints that he was a man of his word. 3 months passed. Ana Lucia asked for the money back 15 times. 15 times Joaquin made excuses, promised to pay the following week, laughed at her when she insisted, and finally, the last time she asked, 2 days ago, he spat on the ground near her feet and said something that would seal his fate. He said, "You're a vagabond whore who lives in a tin shack with a bastard daughter, and you think I'm going to worry about paying 40 miserable pesos to a bitch like you? Go fuck yourself, Ana Lucia. You and that stinking little brat you raised aren't worth even the spit I just threw on the ground." Griselda was inside the shack when she heard that. She was 11 years old, but she already understood perfectly how the world worked in the poor neighborhoods of Medellin. She understood that respect was the only currency that really mattered when you had no money. She understood that allowing someone to disrespect you publicly, letting a man spit near your mother's feet and call them whores without consequences, was the same as putting a target on your back saying you were weak, that they could do anything to you because you never fought back. Griselda left the shack after Joaquin walked away, found her mother sitting on the packed dirt floor, crying silently, and asked where the sharpest kitchen knife they had was. Ana Lucia looked at her daughter without understanding. Griselda repeated the question with a voice so cold, so completely devoid of childish emotion, that Ana Lucia felt a chill run down her spine. "The kitchen knife, mother." "Where is it?" For 3 days, Griselda followed Joaquin. She learned his routine, discovered that he left the construction site where he worked at 5 in the afternoon, stopped at a bar until 7, and then walked home via a route that passed through 3 different streets, always choosing Carrera 52 because it was the busiest and he liked to greet acquaintances. Griselda chose Carrera 52 precisely for that reason. The more witnesses, the better. Because what she was about to do was not just kill a man, it was send a message to the entire neighborhood about what happened to people who disrespected her family. She studied how he walked, noticed that he was always a bit drunk at 7 in the evening, noticed that he never looked back, never paid attention to his surroundings, and she sharpened that knife until she could see her reflection in the blade. At 7:17 p.m. on Tuesday, Griselda saw Joaquin leave the bar. She followed him along Carrera 52, keeping her distance, waiting for the perfect moment. And then, when he passed a fruit stall where at least 30 people were nearby, Griselda ran. Her barefoot feet made no noise on the asphalt. Joaquin heard nothing until he felt her weight jumping onto his back, and by then it was too late. The knife entered the left side of his neck, cutting through the carotid artery, the trachea, the muscles, coming out the other side with a jet of blood that splattered a woman who was buying oranges 3 meters ahead. Joaquin tried to scream, but only a gurgling sound came from his slashed throat. He brought his hands to his neck, trying to stop the blood gushing between his fingers, staggered forward, fell to his knees, and then collapsed face down on the ground as Griselda jumped off his back and stood beside the body, the knife still in her hand, Joaquin's blood dripping from the blade. The silence that fell over Carrera 52 lasted perhaps 5 seconds. 5 seconds in which 30 people processed what they had just witnessed. An 11-year-old child had just killed an adult man in front of all of them, with such brutal efficiency that it seemed impossible to have come from someone so young. And then the chaos began. women screaming, men running to help Joaquin even knowing he was already dead, children crying, someone shouting to call the police. But Griselda did not run. She stood there, looking at Joaquin's body, watching the blood spreading across the asphalt, forming a dark pool that reflected the light from the stalls. And then she turned to the crowd that was starting to form around her, made sure to look into the eyes of several people she knew from the neighborhood, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "He owed money to my mother. He spat at her. He called us whores. No one disrespects my family. No one." Griselda began walking toward her shack. The crowd parted to let her pass, people stepping back as if she were radioactive. No one tried to stop her. No one dared to touch her. An 11-year-old child who had just committed a murder in broad daylight, in front of dozens of witnesses, and was calmly heading home as if she had just gone to buy bread. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They went to Ana Lucia's shack, found Griselda washing the knife in the bucket of water used for everything, and arrested her. She did not resist. She put her hands forward when asked, allowed herself to be taken to the station, sat in the hard chair in the interrogation room, and waited. Detective Julio Mendoza had 22 years of experience in the Medellin police. He had interrogated killers, rapists, thieves of all kinds, gangsters who killed for less than 100 pesos. But when he entered that room and saw Griselda Blanco, 11 years old, 1 meter 40 tall, perhaps 35 kilograms, sitting with an upright posture and eyes that showed no fear, remorse, or any emotion he would expect to see in a child who had just committed her first homicide, Mendoza felt something he rarely felt: genuine discomfort. He pulled up a chair, sat across the table, and asked, "Do you know why you're here?" Griselda looked at him without blinking. "I killed Joaquin Rios because he owed money to my mother and disrespected her." Mendoza expected denial, tears, perhaps an attempt to say it was an accident. But no. Direct confession, without emotion, as if she were reporting the weather. "Do you understand that killing someone is wrong?" Griselda tilted her head slightly. "Letting someone disrespect your family without doing anything is also wrong. I chose which wrong was acceptable." Mendoza spent the next 2 hours trying to break that cold facade, trying to make Griselda show any sign of being a normal child who had committed a terrible impulsive act. But the more he talked to her, the more he realized something disturbing. Griselda had not acted on impulse. She had meticulously planned the murder. She calmly explained how she followed Joaquin for 3 days, how she chose Carrera 52 specifically because she wanted witnesses, how she sharpened the knife until she was sure it would cut deeply with a single blow, how she practiced jumping onto something approximately the size of an adult man to make sure she could reach the neck. At 11 years old, Griselda Blanco had executed a murder with a level of premeditation that Mendoza rarely saw in experienced adult criminals. And when he asked if she regretted it, Griselda replied, "No. He had to pay. He paid." The news spread through Medellin like wildfire. An 11-year-old girl stabbed an adult man in the neck on a busy street. The newspapers published the story with sensational headlines: "Niña asesina," "Little Demon," "The child who killed for 40 pesos." But in the poor neighborhoods, especially in the slums where Griselda had grown up, the story took a different form. People whispered about the girl who defended her mother's honor, the child who proved that disrespect had consequences, the little one who did what adult men often lacked the courage to do, who chose extreme violence over accepting humiliation. Within a week, Griselda Blanco became a local legend. Mothers told their children to be careful what they said, because you never know when you're talking to someone who has a Griselda in the family. Men who owed money began paying their debts much more diligently, always with the thought in the back of their minds that perhaps, just perhaps, the person they owed had a daughter as crazy as that girl who killed Joaquin Rios for 40 pesos. Griselda's trial was quick. She was a minor, confessed everything, and the judge had few options beyond sending her to a juvenile institution. But the judge also said something during sentencing that would be repeated many times in the years to come. He looked at Griselda and said, "You killed a man at 11 years old with premeditation and coldness that I rarely see in professional criminals. You show no remorse. You show no understanding that taking a life is wrong. I sincerely hope that the next few years in this institution teach you some humanity, because if you continue on this path, girl, you will become a monster long before you turn 20. Griselda heard the sentence without expression. When asked if she had anything to say, she simply replied, "No one disrespects my family. Remember that." Griselda spent 3 years in the juvenile institution. During that time, other inmates tried to intimidate her, thinking a skinny girl would be easy prey. They quickly learned they were terribly wrong. Griselda broke the nose of a girl who tried to steal her food. She stabbed another inmate with a sharpened fork when he cornered her in the bathroom. After those incidents, no one messed with her anymore. She spent the 3 years studying, observing, learning from other young criminals about the underworld of Medellin, about thefts, about smuggling, about the gangs that controlled different territories. At 14 years old, when she was released, Griselda Blanco left that institution not reformed, but educated. Educated in the criminal arts in a way few had access to. In the next 16 years, Griselda would build a drug trafficking empire that would move billions of dollars, kill hundreds of people, and forever change the landscape of cocaine trafficking between Colombia and the United States. She would become known as the Black Widow, the Queen of Cocaine, La Madrina. But it all started on that April Tuesday in 1954, when an 11-year-old girl decided that 40 pesos and her family's respect were worth more than a man's life. When she took a kitchen knife, followed Joaquin Rios along Carrera 52, jumped on his back, and slit his throat in front of 30 witnesses, sending a message that would echo through the poor neighborhoods of Medellin for decades. Griselda Blanco does not accept disrespect. She never did. She never would. And anyone who forgot that would pay with blood, just as Joaquin paid. 40 pesos. A slashed neck. A legend born. Colombia would never be the same again.